Welcome to Hey guys, this is my new series called Nexus Horror Stories. Okay, give me a week or a month to actually do these horror stories because give me time to actually do. But if you actually want to do a horror story yourselves, please comment below the video to do it. These will be different stories each month, not the same ones. It will be up to 20 chapters because I can't do 10 or I can't do 30. This is The Time We Kill, a 1950 horror romance. 40-year-old Wilbur Proud, who was abused by his family. Each, honestly, for the first 3 chapters, it will actually be normal. But it turned dark. 20 chapters. I won't get into it and spoil it at the beginning of my intro, but there's an advisory. It's going to have abuse, gore, killing, and murder set in the 1950s. Let's begin. Chapter 1, The Outcast. The kitchen of the Proud home always smelled of burnt toast, Aquanet, hairspray, sharp subcane mix. That Wilbur could never quite wash out of his clothes. It was 1957, and era of shiny chrome appliance, perfectly American lawns, and families smile at the pages of the Saturday Evening Post. But inside the house on Elm Street, Wilbur didn't belong that world. While his twin sisters, Emma and Hannah, sat at the night scent in their press poodle skirts, whisper giggling over the latest Buddy Holly record. Wilbur has on his knee. Wilbur was on his knees, his hands all red, scrubbing the linoleum floor with harsh lye salt. At 14, he didn't know what the inside a local high school looked like. His days weren't measured by class bells, but by chores. John Proud sat at the head of the table, snapping his newspaper open. "Kate," he barked, not looking up. "The coffee's lukewarm. Fix it." Kate Proud, her apron spotless, and her hair pinned up a rigid flip, immediately fluttered to the stove. "Right away, dear." Wilbur paused his scrubbing, his back aching. He looked at his sister, who deliberately looked away, completely ignoring his existence. As they passed the butter, the fairness of the burn in his throat,
before he could stop. I could fix it, Wilbur said with the cracking voice slightly. If I wasn't busy doing the job Emma and Hannah were supposed to do yesterday. The kitchen dead silent. The newspaper scratch of the newspaper stopped. John slowly lowered the paper. His eyes, cold and dark, locked on Wilbur. He stood up, tower over him, with his heavy leather Oxford shoes clicking on the wet floor. What did you say? John said, quiet, dangerous, quiet. Wilbur swallowed hard and drew a spike in his chest, and he dropped his gaze. I said it's not fair. I do everything around here, and they crack. The slap fast and heavy, and back of John hand catch. Wilbur crossed the cheek. The force of it sent Wilbur sideways. His palm splashed into the dirty bucket of dirty soapy water. His stinging face is a metallic taste of blood lying of his lip. You don't speak unless you're spoken to, boy. John said smoothly, adjusted his cuff as he had just swallowed a fly. You live under my roof. You earn your keep. Now finish the floor. Kate didn't turn around the stove. Emma and Hannah went right back, whispering. Wilbur kept his head down and reflected the soapy water, feeling dark, quiet anger to take root inside him. This established the heavy contrast prefer of the 1950s dynamic on the outside of Wilbur's face on the inside. Chapter 2. The Girl Next Door. The bruise on Wilbur's cheek turned a dull, ugly purple. By Saturday morning, but there was no time to rest. A moving truck had pulled up to the White House across the street. Its heavy ramp changing across the asphalt. John Proud stood by the front window, parting the lace curtains with 2 fingers. His eyes narrow as he watched the new neighbors unpack boxes of records, mid-century modern lamps, a bright red bike, and a girl stepped out the passenger side of the car. She wore a bright yellow dress, seemed catch every drop of the morning sun. Her dark hair tied up with a matching ribbon. Wilbur, John said in a sharp voice. Wilbur walked into the living room, keeping his eyes on the carpet. Yes, sir? The new neighbors just moved from Chicago. The father is an executive at the plant, John said, turning around with a smoothing his tie. We need to make a good impression. Take that basket of muffins your mother made and go welcome them. Especially talk to the daughter Penny. She show her around. Be polite. John stepped closer, his shadow falling over Wilbur. He reached out, gripping his shoulder and digging his nails into his bones. Don't screw this up. If you embarrass this family in front of the neighborhood, you wish you'd never been born, understand? Yes, sir, Wilbur whispered. 5 minutes later, Wilbur walked across the asphalt, his heart hammering against his ribs. He held the wicker basket tightly and in his hands. As he approached the driveway, the girl in the yellow dress turned around, and she had a bright, alternate eyes and a smile that immediately made Wilbur forget his speech and rehearse his head. "Hi there," she said, wiping a bit of dust from her hands. I'm Penny. I'm Wilbur," he stammered, his face instantly flushed. "My family live across the street. We want to welcome you to the neighborhood." He stand the basket. Penny smiled widely. "Oh wow, blueberry, my absolute favorite. Thank you, Wilbur." As she took the basket, her finger brushed against his. He jolt went through Wilbur, a warm he never felt in as long as he could remember. For a few minutes, standing there, taken to Penny about her old school and her favorite radio station. A heavy weight in Wilbur's chest completely vanished. He laughed for the first time in months. He has completely captivated from the porch across the street. John Proud watched every reaction, his eye tracking that Wilbur smiled. The way his shoulder relaxed, the way he looked at the girl. When Wilbur walked into his own house, his mind is spinning thoughts of Penny. He didn't notice his father standing in his shadow at hallways until it was too late. John stepped out that blocked his path to the kitchen. Look at his face and made Wilbur's stomach drop. "You like her, don't you?" John sneered. Wilbur froze the kitchen. She's very nice, sir. I did want what you asked. You look like a lovesick puppy," John growled, his face with disgust. "A boy like you." You you think a girl from a family like that would ever look at a pathetic, worthless servant? You're a distraction. You're supposed to represent this house, not to make a fool of yourself. Before Wilbur could step back, John's fist flew forward. The punch caught Wilbur square in the stomach. The rush of air out of his lungs in a sharp gasp. He collapsed to his knees of the hallway and clutched Miss Selection, desperate for oxygen. Get up and get to the basement, John muttered. Look at him with utter contempt. You're done for the day. Lying on the hardwood, started through the screen door at the yellow dress across the street. Wilbur felt something change inside him. The sadness is replaced by cold, sharp anger. The stakes are raised and represent a point for Wilbur. Chapter 3, The Breaking Point.
Honestly, the night of the basement begins. It was freezing. He finally fell asleep on the thing. It did give him peace. It gave him a dream. In the dream, the house on Elm Street was dead silent. He walked into the kitchen, but the water wasn't soapy water. It was stained with red. He stood over his father, his mother, his sisters, and his hand he held a heavy iron fire poker. They didn't hurt him anymore. They couldn't speak. The first time in his life, Wilbur felt safe. He woke up with his heart pounded in the dark. He sat up, shaking, wiping a cold sweat from his forehead. The clock upstairs said 2 a.m. The house above him is quiet, save for the heavy snore of his father. Wilbur couldn't stay in the basement another second. Moving like a shadow, he crept up the wooden stairs, unlocked the back door, and slipped out in the cool night air and the neighborhood pale silver moon. Across the street, drawn toward Penny House, a field closed and one good thing in his world. He stood by the garden, looked up and assumed of her bedroom window, but then he heard muffled, sharp cry. It wasn't coming from upstairs, it coming from the back parlor. Wilbur crept closer and pressed his back against the brick wall and peered in the glass. What he saw shattered his image of the perfect executive family. Penny was standing in the center of the room, her head bowed. Her father, a polished man in a sharp suit from Chicago, was looming over her with twisted rage as he pointed a
harsh finger in her face. Her mother stood by by the door, completely indifferent, smoke a cigarette, watching. Suddenly, her father grabbed her roughly by her arm and shaking her so hard her ribbon fell out of her hair before shoving her into the chair. Inside of Wilbur, something snapped. The cold air that had shimmering for years boiled into something pure, blinding white hate. A roaring sound filled his ears. His hand balled up into fists. His fingernail dug into his palms and nearly bled. He wanted to crash through the glass. He wanted a heavy stone bird bath from the lawn to tear apart the house. He wanted to make them pay for Penny and for himself. He took a step forward the window and his breath ragged. Not yet. No, not yet. A quiet voice in the back of his mind whispered, "If you run in there now, they catch you. They separate you from her." Wilbur forced his eyes to shut. He took long, shaky breaths of the midnight air and forced the adrenaline back down into his chest. He forced his muscles to relax, a common rage inside him. He opened his eyes and a blank expression, but his resolve set in stone. He eventually all going to pay. Eventually, given the window one last look, Wilbur turned around and slipped into the street and the dark belly on home. That is a massive cliffhanger. Honestly, now in time for the next chapters. And you guys want to know, it's gonna get dark. Chapter 4. The Thanksgiving Carver. The sun had fully arisen, and Wilbur slipped back through the basement door. He didn't sleep. He edge of the cot, watching the shadow stretch across the concrete door. Listen, the house wake up. Upstairs, the heavy rhythm thud of his father's footsteps start another day. Wilbur John voice boom down the stairwell. "Get up here. The kitchen is prepping." Wilbur stood up, and the fear that usually made his knees shake is completely got replaced by a icy calm as sullen night before he walked up the stairs into the kitchen. John Proud was standing by a counter, a cigarette dangling on his lips, read over paperwork. On the counter sat a heavy electric turkey carver, a sleek chrome appliance. John was sent buying for the upcoming holiday, boasting for a serrated blade, Hold the steady while I plug it in. John ordered, gesturing to a heavy wooden cutting board. Wilbur stepped forward, instead of reaching through for the board. His hand sudden quiet precision. He reached out, grabbed his father's right wrist, pinning him flat against the board. A strain born of pure desperation and built of rage. What the think you're doing? John started shock. Before John could pull away or swing a fist, Wilbur reached for the electric carver and he flipped the switch. The twin blade roared to life. A high-pitched, terrified buzz. In one swift, heavy motion, Wilbur brought the vibrating blade down on his father's wrist, and the steel tore through the skin and bone. Instantly, John let out a choke, horrified scream, and stumbled and back forward as blood sprayed across the pristine white cabinets. The linoleum floor Wilbur had spent years of scrubbing. He collapsed against the refrigerator, clutching his stump of an arm. His face turned pale as he stared at his son in absolute terror. Wilbur stood over him, and the buzzes sounded loudly in his hand. His face completely splattered with red. He looked down at his father. Then he heavily severed his hands, rested on the cupboard. A dark, twisted thought crossed Wilbur's mind. He took at the blood soaked into the kitchen. His father always treated him like a piece of meat. A servant that carved up and discarded now on the table turned this is a massive complete dart. Now it's time for Chapter 5, Cold Storage. The kitchen was echoed with a hum of the electric carver, heavy footsteps, Emma and Hannah's sound on the stairs. They complained to each other about a room record, totally unaware of the nightmare of the doorway. Then they stepped into the kitchen. They froze. They looked at their eyes took in the blood of the cabinets, and the father collapsed on the door, and Wilbur standing in the center completely changed. Wilbur moved completely changed. Before they draw breath to scream, Wilbur moved. Drones fueled the instinct. Wilbur grabbed both of his sisters and dragged them down towards a porch. where the house have a massive industrial size chest freezer and sat. It was a deep freezer. It father used to store meat for winter. A heavy white box that locked from the outside. With the a strength he didn't know had. Wilbur forced Emma and Hannah into the freezer depths of the unit and slammed the heavy lid. Slide the latch, frantic and screaming pounded, and installed and thudded until the fire stopped completely an hour later. Wilbur flipped the latch and lid, and intense cold rushed out. The warm air inside. Emma and Hannah sat perfectly still. The skin a pale blue frosted blue, and their impression locked into a perfect shock. They look like a department store mannequin, frozen solid of sub-zero temperature. Wilbur reached into his tool belt and pulled out a heavy wooden mallet and from his father's workbench. He looked at the girls who've spent years laughing at his misery and treat him like he's invisible while he slaved away for the family. He raised the mallet and swing. He brought the mallet down, and the brittle and frozen and shattered instantly until the force of the blow, breaking apart instantly into fragile ice sculptures on a winter morning. Wilbur stepped back and wiped the frost dust from the apron. The kitchen was quiet. The hallway is quiet. The house is emptier hours. Wilbur finally the one in control. The Proud family disappeared piece by piece, and Wilbur's dark transformation is finally underway. Chapter 6: The Hearth. With his father and sisters gone, the only one remained in the house on Elm Street is Kate Proud. Came downstairs a few hours. Her footsteps lighted on the wood resin. She hummed a popular tune on the radio, adjusted her apron. I completely to find Wilbur scrubbing the counters, and her husband read a newspaper. Instead, she stepped into a kitchen that is dead silent. It smelled like iron and bleach. Before she could process the empty room or the bloodstains, she missed by the cloth. Wilbur stepped out the pantry. Kate blinked, looked at her son, cold, unblinking eyes. Wilbur, where is your father? And why you haven't you start breakfast? Wilbur didn't answer. He walked up towards her, holding a heavy container of kerosene from the garage. Kate's eyes widened in alarm. as she knows the dark splatter on his clothes. Wilbur, is that? What are you doing? In one motion, Wilbur splashed flammable wicker on her pristine dress. Kate screamed and stumbled backwards into the living room. Her hand frantically to wipe the chemical from her fabric. She backed up until the needs hit the brick hearth of the large living fireplace, where a fire was already crackling on the chill of the house. Wilbur, stop that this instant! She gasped, her voice trembling with rage and panic. Your father will. Father isn't coming, Wilbur said quietly. He reached out his pocket and pulled out a silver matchbook. He struck the match, and a small illuminating flame that corners the room, and tossed it forward. At the moment the flame touched the kerosene, the fire erupts a massive blind flash. Kate let out a piercing scream as the orange flame engulfs her. Spread in a terrified spree, she fell backward, falling directly into the open fireplace. The heat inside of the heath intense, roaring into life as draft into smoke up the chimney. Wilbur stood perfectly still in the center that turned a blind eye to his suffering. The fire hot and fast, reducing everything to ash until the roaring flame upside, leaving flame behind. Nothing but a scourge of black skeleton rested on the iron gates. Wilbur took a deep breath, and the house completely empty now. The silence absolute. He walked over the front window, planted the lace curtains. The look across the street at the Penny's house, the stage was set. The Proud family was completely eliminated, and Wilbur was completely cleared of obstacles inside of his own home. Chapter 7. The trap is set. The heavy silence of the empty Proud house was exactly that Wilbur needed to think clearly. His own house was taken care of, but the anger inside him wouldn't fully fade. People hurting Penny were deal with too. He looked across the street at the polished suburban home where Penny father kept his prized possession, a gleaming 1955 Ford Fairlane, parked in the driveway. Wilbur knew his father was meticulous. Every evening, he left a must-stay work boots at the porch, switching the polished Oxford dress shoes for a morning commute to the plant. Under the cover of the late night shadow, Wilbur crept across the Elm Street, carrying a small bucket of quick drying cement from his father's workbench, a pair of heavy-duty pliers. He slipped into the porch of Penny's house first, moving like a ghost. He mixed a small amount of thick gray cement and poured directly into the toes of the work boots, smoothly and flat, unyielded block overnight. When Penny's father tried to step into them, his feet wouldn't fit inside the weather. Next, he crawled into the callus of the fourth landing. The smell of oil and asphalt surrounded him as slid under the axle, holding a flashlight between his teeth. He located the exotic brake lines running along the frame. Snip, snip. A heavy wire cutters sliced through the metal lines with two sharp clicks. Immediately, a dark stream of brake fluid began to pool out into the pavement. Without the fluid, the brake pedal would go soft, and the heavy car would do no way to stop at once it rolled down the steep hill at the neighborhood. Wilbur wiped his hands on his trousers and slid out of the vehicle. He glanced up at Penny's dark bedroom, a cold smile across his face. The trap was set, and the morning commute was going to be unforgettable. Wilbur is official, taking his revenge outside of his walls now. Chapter 8, Dark Echoes. The morning sun hits Elm Street. The sound of milk bottles clinking in the neighborhood, greeting each other, felt completely different. Wilbur stood by his window, watching the house across the street, waiting for the chaos to set in motion. But the front door didn't open. The foot remained untouched of the driveway. Instead, a chilling silence hung over the Penny house. The scene that something has shifted. Wilbur slipped out the back door and crossed the asphalt, navigating around the back garden where he had a night to, and the heavy set of iron hung in the thick morn dew. Approached the back window and looked inside, and the room was in disarray. In the center of the room, a penny, where the yellow dress she worn as a Manta was gone, replaced by a dark stained smock. Her expression wasn't one of fear or sadness anymore. Her eyes were wide and vacant and immense. In her hand was a heavy, rusty garden sickle and shed. On the floor lay her mother. Before Wilbur could even draw a breath to call out, Penny swung the blade, frantic force, the heavy steel across her neck, with a final desperate hack and completely severed completely. Penny stood up straight, breathing heavily, holding the sickle at the side as her mother head rolled across the floor, becoming to a complete star near her the velvet armchair. Wilbur stared at the glass, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had thought he was the only one harboring a dark, violent storm. The one driven erase the people who caused his pain. Seeing Penny reminds stand over the remains of her own tormentor, he realized that they were identical. The trauma of the neighborhood had twisted them both into exact same. Penny slowly turned her head toward the window, her gaze into Wilbur's eyes. Through the window, she didn't scream or run. Instead, a slow, knowing smile across her face. Chapter 9, Two of a Kind. The back door of Penny House creaked open, and Wilbur stepped inside. Across the threshold into the quiet horror parlor, the copper smell of blood overwhelming, but neither of them flinched. Penny set the guard sickle down on the table, wiped a stray strand of dark hair from her forehead, and leaving a smudge of red from her skin. She looked at Wilbur, her eyes searching his face, look for horror or disgust. She found none. "You saw?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw. Wilbur said quietly. He looked a step closer. Her hand, her, her, showing her his own hand, still rough and stained with the events of his own house. You don't have to worry about my family anymore. Penny, they're gone. All of them. Penny eyes widen slightly. A profound wave of relief washed over her features for the first time. The ridge, the defensive tension of her shoulders. They were going to send me away, she confessed. Her voice trembled slightly. After the parlor the other night, they said I was broken, that they were going to put me in an asylum. They can't touch you now, Wilbur said. They stepped right up to her. He reached out gently and took her hand into his. They were cold, but to him, they felt the only warm thing in the world. Standing in the ruined house, surrounding the remnants of the broken lives, the shared trauma fused into the tense, unbreakable. They weren't alone anymore. In a perfect, a world of perfect 1950s episode and hidden cruelty, they had found the only person who truly understood the darkness inside them. Pain looked up at Wilbur's eyes, a gaze fierce and devotion. It's just you and me now, Wilbur, forever. Just you and me. Wilbur agreed, leaning down. Then their lips met. It's not sweet, innocent suburban romance. It's a pack sealed in the dark, a desperate passion standing between two people who had destroyed their past to build a future together. With the bond completely solidified, Wilbur and Penny are official team devotion to one another and face whatever comes next. Chapter 10. The Legend of Redrum. The American round lawns as shining chrome faded into history in the 1950s. It gave away to the turbulent 60s, and now the calendar on the wall read 1977. 2 decades has passed since the quiet suburban neighborhood had since its first disappearance, but The world outside had never stopped talking about what came next. Over 20 years, a shadow, a dark shadow, had stretched across the newspaper, the country. The newspaper did know the names Will Proud or Penny. Instead, the headlines scream a single terrifying word that stuck it into the hearts of the families coast to coast. Redrum. The FBI and local police department. Redrum is a ghost, a mysterious serial killer who, perhaps a pair of them, who struck with absolute precise and left absolutely no clues behind. No fingerprints, no fibers, no witnesses. Every crime scene was perfectly clean, a testament to Melissa's methical habits. Wilbur has learned during those years of forced cleaning, combined with Penny sharp calculated mind. They had 20 years moved from city to city, living quiet, the ordinary lives on the surface. A married couple who kept to themselves. But behind closed doors, they bond only growed stronger. Viewed by their dark pack they had made as teenagers. In a hidden basement workshop, while from where it all began. Wilbur stood over a desk covered in newspaper clippings of detailed own legend. The radio corner hub of the late night broadcast. Police are still completely baffled by the latest Redrum disappearance. The announcer voiced a drum. Authorities admit that they have no closer to suspect that they were a decade ago. Penny walked down the stairs. Her dark hair now styled in a sleek 1970 cut, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She set one down in front of Wilbur and leaned over his shoulder. Looking at the headlines, a slow knowing smile crossed her face. Identical to the one she gave him, though parlor window 20 years ago. They still looking for a monster, Wilbur, she whispered, resting on her hand on his shoulder. Wilbur placed her hand, her a familiar warmth, then grounded at 2 decades of darkness. Let them look, he replied. They never find us. This is a massive time jump. halfway point. Oh, Chapter 11, The Selection. In the 1977, the art of selection targets have become a silent spoken ritual between Wilbur and Penny. They don't choose at random. Their victims were chosen with a dark judicial purpose. People who were the mass of respectability, their family that had worn back on Elm Street, hiding cruelty with behind polished front. The autumn in Ohio town, crisp rustling fallen leaves sidewalk. Wilbur sat behind a wheel of the nondescript brown sedan. The engine ideal smooth in the passenger seat. Penny adjusted her sunglasses. Her eyes locked on a large colonial house corner. The mailbag read the Millers. Arthur Miller is a prominent deacon of the church, respected accountant to the neighborhood. He part of the community, but Wilbur and Penny has been watching him for 3 weeks. They had seen the way Arthur grip his teenage son on the arm in the driveway. Then, when he thought no one was looking, they had seen him. The fear in the boy's eyes, rigid posture of the child, walking on eggshells on him. He reminds me of you, Penny softly. Her voice carried cold edge. The way he commanded the house. The way the rest of them look away. Wilbur gripped the steering wheel. His knuckles turned white, reminding of John Proud 20 years ago, buried under of mountain of ash. And time after at Arthur Miller made the old fire flare up his chest. He think he's safe, Wilbur murmured. His voice is calm but absolute. He think he smile at the neighbors and clean his car on Sundays. Nobody knows what happens when the front doors are closed. Payne reached out over, placing her hands over his. Her touch was an anchor, keeping his rage from spilling too soon. We'll do it tonight. The boy staying at his cousin's house for the weekend. Arthur will be home alone. Wilbur nodded, shifted his sedan to drive, pulling away from the curb, smooth bending. fitfully into the late afternoon. The plan was already forming in the mind, and precise and clean. Arthur Miller had no idea of the phantom the newspaper called Redrum was already parked on his street. That his time was run out. The hunt is on. The stakes are personal again, as Arthur Miller bring back memories of Wilbur's father. Chapter 12, The Web. The clock in the hall of the Miller home struck midnight. Arthur Miller sat in the armchair. The TV is humming with statics. At the late night broadcast ended, he yawned, rubbing his eyes, and unaware of the latch of his basement window had been quietly slid open 10 minutes prior. Wilbur and Penny moved through the dark house of the shadow. The movement completely synchronized. After 2 decades of practice, before Arthur could even stand up, turn of the television, a heavy glove hand cramped over his mouth and pinned him into the chair. Arthur's eyes are wide, the terror as he looked into the cold blanket of Wilbur Proud, and Penny stepped in the shadow, holding a roll of undestroyed tape. Within minutes, Arthur is completely immobile, secured tightly to a heavy wooden chair. A thick layer of tape to silence his scream. Wilbur stepped back and pulled out a jar with a heavy golden pocket. Inside the dark bulbous shape of a dozen black widow spiders shifted the glass with a distant red hourglass mark of the underbellies, catching the faint light of the television. Over the past week, Wilbur carefully harvested them from the old barn at the edge of town, knowing their potential venom has. You inflict pain when you think no one is watching, Wilbur said when his voice's low, terrifying whisper is in the calm room. You think you're the predator in the house, but you're just caught in the web. Penny unscrewed the lid of the jar. The absolute position. Wilbur used a pair of the long brass tongs to place the spiders into Arthur's arm and neck. These spiders are agitated by the sudden movement of the warmth of the skin and suddenly strike. Arthur's eyes strain against his face, body compulsed and panic against the heavy tape as the Sharp needle-like bite inject severe neurotoxin into the bloodstream. The pain was immediate. Spread the liquid fire through the veins, causing the muscle to finally cramp and lock up. Wilbur and Penny, side by side, completely calm, watching the life drain of the man who terrorized his own son. They didn't leave a single fingerprint, a single fiber, or a single drop of evidence. By the time of the venom stop, Arthur's heart, the room is dead silent. Penny carefully collects the spiders from the jar, ensure the scene is complete mystery to the police, and slip back into the cool 1977 night air, leaving behind another another complete baffling case for the file of Redrum. The legend of Redrum grows even more terrifying and elusive. The animal on the screen. Chapter 13. 3 days later, the brown sedan was parked outside the quiet diner on the state line. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of bacon grease and cheap pre-colate coffee. Wilbur and Penny sat in a little booth in the back corner. Their expressions perfectly blank. They actually watch a small black and white TV above. Local news anchors a grim and graphic of around the suspect flash on the screen. The autopsy report Arthur Miller have released. The anchor announced, shuffling the paper. Police are perpetrator savage, unhinged animal. The severe cruelty of method, the community paralyzed with fear. Investigators state that the only a monster completely detached from humanity can devise such a horrific punishment. Penny took a slow sip of the coffee, her eyes leaving the screen. A cold, cynical smile tugged on her lips. She leaned across a table, her voice dropped a so the waitress here. An animal? She whispered. They call us monsters. Because they don't understand that the math of it. Wilbur. They didn't see that he did behind closed doors. They think the monster is the one who deserve the punishment, not the one who earned it. Wilbur kept his face folded in his mug. Watch the static heavy folded of the Miller home and the corner off the police tape. For 20 years, the media painted them as mindless beasts, completely missing the political justice behind every single strike. They weren't killed for sport. They were clear out the weeds that the law refused to touch. Let them call us animals, Wilbur replied quietly, his gaze onto hers. Animals won't hunt to survive. We survive Elm Street, and we're surviving this. They want a monster. We keep giving them exactly what they looking for. Pei reached across the table. Her fingers brush against his. The dark understanding between hit them than ever. The world outside could scream all it wanted, but inside their quiet bubble, the plan was moving forward. The public perception of Redrum is getting wilder, but Wilbur and Penny remain completely detached, viewing themselves as a force of justice in rather than monsters that news describe. Chapter 14, Quiet Moments. The roar of the headlines chased the shadows. Suddenly, wait. A few weeks after the Miller case, in the quiet bathroom of the rented, Penny looked down of a small vial glass. Her results were clear. She walked into the living room where Wilbur was cleaning the spark plugs and simply placed hands over her stomach. Wilbur, she said softly, a warm break through her icy demeanor. We have to stop for a while. Wilbur looked up and realized that hit him. For 20 years, their lives had been defined of a shared mission of vengeance and survival. But a new life entered their world, an innocent life that had nothing to do with the trauma of Elm Street or the darkness of Redrum. 9 months, Wilbur said, without standing up, wiping the grease stained hands on the rag. His voice is absolute. No scouting, no hunting, no risk. The world can forget Redrum for a year. The next 9 months, the Phantom vanished completely. The police scanners and the front page. The FBI were baffled by the sudden and total silence from the killer who had been active for 2 decades. They assume Redrum had died, moved overseas, or simply stopped. Instead, Wilbur and Penny lived normal lives they had ever known. They moved to a quiet rural town of Indiana, rented a small farmhouse surrounded by cornfields. Wilbur took a job at a local repair shop, keeping his head down and earning an honest wage. A Penny staying home, knitting a small yellow garments and resting in the fireplace. The first time since 1957, they weren't looking over their shoulders or playing a trap. They were long evenings sitting on the porch swing, watching the sunset over fields. They talk about names, future, and life away from blood ash. But Penny's stomach grew, and Wilbur sometimes caught staring out at the dark tree line at night. Her eyes wide reflect the darkness had it left them. It has just sleeping, waiting for the child to arrive if the world force them hand again. Chapter 15, the new begin. This, the heat of midsummer 1978, the quiet farmhouse echo and sound it had never heard of the sharp newborn cry. The doctor come and gone, leaving the home in peaceful, exhausted silence. Wilbur sat on the edge of the bed, the morn and lace of the warmth of the wooden floorboards. In her arms, Penny held a tiny bundle wrapped in yellow blanket, the same shade of yellow that she had worn the day she first met on Elm Street. "She perfect, Wilbur," Penny whispered, her voice softer than it had been since it had been in the 21 year he had known her. He learned in looking down at his daughter. She had penny bright, turned eyes and a head fine dark hair. For the first time in his life, looking at the member of his own bloodline didn't bring a surge of anger, fear, or resentment. He felt a profound, overwhelming urge to protect her from cruelties of the world that they spent 2 decades fighting. They named her Lemony. Don't. Yeah, I actually did name her after my mascot. A name that felt bright, sweet, and entire. They're completely detached from the dark names of the past. As Wilbur held his daughter for the first time, his rough, scarred hands felt large against her tiny frame, her fragile frame. He looked at Penny, and unspoken agreement passed between them. The world outside of Redrum has a monster, an animal that could be tamed. But look at Lemony. They knew that the darkness had to stay locked in the basement. Their daughter would know the fear, felt the kitchen on Elm Street. She would never know the terror. Penny back in the pair will keep her safe with a murmur of a thick of emotion, no matter what. Penny nodded, resting her head on the shoulder as Lemony drifted off to sleep. For now, the jar of black widows buried in the garage, the legend of Red Rum, remains a ghost story, and they had a new mission for the world. Lemony changes everything. Them. Introduce completely new moves to keep them there. Chapter 16. Hang up their blades. By the time Lemony was taking their first shaky steps across the farmhouse floor, the world outside completely changed in the late 1970s. We're winding down. The furious hunt for Redrum was beginning to grow cold. The files of the Phantom had been grown quite for over a year, and the public has moving on to new headlines. Inside the quiet sanctuary for the Indiana home, the atmosphere has entirely changed. The house smell of baby powder, fresh milk, and warm vanilla, not bleach, kerosene, or iron. One evening, after Lemony fallen asleep in her baby crib, Penny stood on the by the kitchen floor, looking out on the dark cornfield. Wilbur has at the table manually clean parts of the old radio. His hands moving familiar, quiet position. Penny turned around, expression quite serious, but devoid of old malice. Wilbur, she said, her voice saying, "I want to quit for good." Wilbur stopped work and look up the table. Silence stretched for a moment. It fell for a ticking grandfather clock hall. The mission is done, she continued, walking over and sit across from him and reach out her hands with his rough. We survived. We took care of people that hurt us, and we stop the ones that try to do it to others. But Lemony needs a mother and a father, not two phantoms that chase a ghost. In the dark, I don't want the blood to touch her, Wilbur. Look at Wilbur looked down at her hands. For 21 years, their entire bond has been forged a fire of vengeance and survival. That the darkness shielded their identities and their language. But looking towards the hallway, their daughter stepped safely. He realized that Penny right. The anger has fueled him since he was 14. A boy scrubbing the floors that has been burned itself out, replaced by warmth of a family, and they had built from scratch. I agree, Wilbur said softly. His voice carried weight. No more jars, no more cars, no more Redrum. We we bury it tonight. That night, they under a moonless sky, Wilbur and Penny walk out of the old barn behind the old property, and deep the floorboards in the hidden concrete wall. They drop the tools of the dark trade, the old wire crooked specimen jars and scrapbooks of the news clips, and pour the layer of concrete cachet, sealing the legend of Redrum forever. They walk back house hand in hand, completely free for the first time in their lives. They officially retire from the dark path, choosing their daughter over the legend. Chapter 17, The Modern Era. The years roll by, turn the pages by the analog world of the late 1970s. The cracking police scanners, physical newspaper clinic, cassette tapes are swallowed up by the digital age. Cassettes turn to CDs, dial-ups internet turn to smartphones, and the mystery of Redrum turned to retro true podcasts, that a cold case that turned into digital sleuths that know real answers. The calendar reading 2026. Almost 50 years has passed since Wilbur and Penny have poured the final layer of concrete over the past in Indiana barn. The world had moved on, so had they. Wilbur has now elderly man, hair entirely silver, hands weakly, but they carry precision. The lifetime of mechanical work. Penny sit beside him, porch, their suburban home, her eyes sharp, soft by decades of peace, a warm tea in her lap. Since that night in 1978, there had no more Redrum, no, not a single headline, not a single person, a political punishment. That the Phantom had stayed dead and buried, exactly promised. Lemony had grown up completely shielded from darkness, and had gone to school, made friends, gone to prom, and built a normal life of her own, entirely unaware that her quiet, devoted parents were the most hunted figures in the country. Lemony and to the years enjoyed their retirement to the suburbs. Wilbur looked at his smartphone, scrolled and recommend video essays titled The Unsung Murder of Redrum. Where did they go? He clicked on the screen and slid into his pocket faint. Quiet smile. The world would never find the answers because the monsters they were looking for didn't exist anymore. They had traded their shadows for sunlight, and nearly 5 decades the peace and had been absolute. The quiet storm completely set, with 2026 established their retirement holding behind their doorstep at the grand finale. Chapter 18 echoes in the quiet. In the evening of 2026, rustling the old oak tree in the front yard inside the house. Inside the house, the television was playing softly a melodic tune, a stark contrast, heavy silence had settled in the living room. Lemony had gone home hours ago after a Sunday dinner, leaving the two them alone and quiet. Wilbur sat in his armchair, staring at his hands, as spotted with age now. The knuckles are swollen, but they're clean, completely clean. Across from him, Penny is crocheting a blanket. Her fingers are moving rhythm. It had become second nature over decades. She looked peacefully, a grandmotherly figure to anyone who might look through the window. But Wilbur knew the sharp, brilliant mind that still live behind those soft eyes. The quiet question, that shimmer of the chest for months, louder and quiet of the heavy hold. Penny, Wilbur said, with his raspy with age. Penny looked at the pause. Yes, Wilbur. L- leaned forward, rested his elbows in his knees, eyes stripped ordinary routine of the girl. Speaking to the girl in the yellow. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Give up our ways, leave our shadows. Penny said the the yarn in her lap. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked slightly, and marking the seconds of life. They had chosen to live in the light. Looking out the windows at the dark street where the neighborhood completely safe, ordinary sometimes, Penny confessed. Her voice a completely sharp tone. It had heard in 48 years. Sometimes I heard the news, Wilbur. I see people who get away with things. I see the world cruelty of the world. I feel the sickle in my hand again. I think about easy to clear the weeds. She looked back at him, her soft fin of across the table. It touched his winkly hand, but then I look at the lemony. Penny said softly. I look at the life she got to live because we choose to be quiet. We give up our ways so she can have a normal one. I don't regret that saving her from darkness, do you? Wilbur looked down and joined her. An old fire was still there. A tiny ember burned under 50 years of ash. No, Wilbur. Mother squeezed her fingers. I don't regret it, but the world doesn't stop being dark just because we stop hunting. The peace were into place. Wilbur and Penny have acknowledged the linger shadow inside them. Before the let go, chapter 9. Now it's time for the final, chapter 20. Time for chapter 19. Wilbur looked at the framed photograph on the mantel. A glass photo of 50 years are fully realized. Lemony on her wedding day, radiant, and her graduation. Pictures of their grandkids are wearing caps and gowns. Faces bright and potential, and right at the newest edition of the parades, their great grandkids are tall and chase the bubbles of the backyard of the summer barbecue of nothing to fear. They sound like a basement or the sun. They didn't know the panic of a locked basement or a suffocating silence of a broken home. They were loud, happy, and entirely safe. Wilbur turned back to Penny, and lingering tension from previous question completely melted away. His expression soft and hard line given way to a profound quiet peace. Look at them, Penny, Wilbur said, gesturing the mantle and nod as slightly nod as silver. We had grandkids. We had great grandkids. An entire family tree built on out of the dust of Elm Street. He stood up, walking over to her chair gently, placing his old, worn hands over hers. I never regret it, Wilbur said, his voice thick of a lifetime of a century. Not that for a single second. Every day we stay quiet. Every day we chose a life in light. We were given them a chance to exist. The way to Redrum ended, so their lives could begin. That's the best thing they ever did. Payne looked him up, her eyes glistering slightly in a soft lampshade. She squeezed his hands slightly. The dark, violent history shared. They shared finally feeling completely outweighed by the massive legacy of the love created of the broken cycle. They have won outside the night quiet the modern world hum peacefully around. They were an ordinary loving every couple warp in the warm of a well-loved live emotional peak, completely set of the legacy of the family is thriving, and Wilbur have no regrets. Chapter 20, Disclosure. Honestly, in the morning of 2026, the studio is illuminated. The casted bright, the high microphone, the acoustic pale, and the voice of the digital it had secrets and weird truth. Wilbur sat front of the microphone, his silver hair comb and posture. Despite his age, I can sit across the table and podcast, adjust his headphones. His face, a mix of intense skepticism and the random recording like the bright wall. For nearly 50 years, the FBI investigated journalists in a sleuth chase a phantom. Wilbur began his voice, carrying calm and lifetime keeping secrets. They call us animals, call us monsters. They wrote books of Redrum. They wonder why the trail went cold in 1978. He reached to his pocket an old silver matchbook of Elm Street on the Rasa, the heavy dual curse. The trail didn't went cold because we were caught, Wilbur said, looking directly into the camera lens. It went cold because we chose to build a family. We chose our daughter, our grandkids, our great grandkids, a life in the light. But the history remains. The math of what we did is still real. In the studio behind the glass, the phone lines were already beginning to light up at the confession room. The world finally hear the true story of Wilbur Petty, not from files or theories, but from the source itself. The silence in the studio is absolute. Petty Wilbur leaned close to the microphone and ready to lay down the final piece of the legend. Have a good day, guys. I see you in the next video. See you next story. This was a long one. Bye.